The morning sun of Velthara Prime cast long shadows across the marble steps of the Institute. Dr. Taman Korth walked up those steps like he owned them. In many ways he did. For 20 years he had been the most respected xenoarchaeologist in the Confederation. His discoveries had filled museums across 12 worlds. His books were required reading at every major university. Today he was angry. Taman pushed through the heavy doors of the Institute's main hall. Other researchers stepped aside as he passed. They knew that look on his face. Someone was about to get a lecture they would never forget. The source of his anger sat in a neat stack on his desk. Reports from the Contact Division. Files about the newest species to join galactic civilization. The humans of Earth. Taman dropped into his chair and opened the first file. He had read it 3 times already, but he read it again anyway. The facts made his blood boil. Humans had only left their home system 50 years ago. 50 years! Most species took thousands of years to reach other stars after inventing space travel. These humans had done it in what felt like yesterday. The Contact Division had given them a Category C rating. New species. Limited technology. Recently spacefaring. In other words, not worth much attention from serious scientists. But that wasn't enough for some people. Dr. Mion Vel knocked on his doorframe. "Taman, are you ready for the meeting?" Mion had worked with Taman for 15 years. She was one of the few people brave enough to question him when he was wrong. Today she agreed with him completely. "I'm ready," Taman said. He picked up the human files. "Let's go remind the council why we don't waste time on primitives." The council chamber was full when they arrived. Representatives from every department sat around the circular table. At the head sat Director Nari Wolth, a stern woman who had run the Institute for 30 years. "Today we discuss resource allocation for the coming year," Director Wolth announced. "Several departments have requested funding to study the new human species." Dr. Hyunwoo Zenth raised his hand. He was young, maybe 30 years old. His research focused on pre-contact civilizations. Taman had always thought the boy showed promise, but today he was about to make a fool of himself. "Director, I believe we should assign significant resources to studying human culture and history," Hyunwoo said. His voice was steady, but Taman could see his hands shaking slightly. "And why is that, Dr. Zenth?" the director asked. Hyunwoo stood up. He had prepared notes, but he didn't look at them. Humans developed faster than any species we've ever encountered. In just 50 years, they went from single-planet civilization to interstellar travel. Their technology advancement rate is unprecedented. Taman couldn't stay quiet anymore. He stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "Dr. Zenth, with respect, you're talking nonsense." The room went quiet. Everyone knew what happened when Taman Korth started a debate. People either learned something or got embarrassed, usually both. "Humans are barely out of their caves," Taman continued. "They've had spaceflight for what, 200 years? My people were exploring the galaxy when humans were still hitting rocks together to make fire." Mion nodded beside him. "The Confederation has encountered over 400 species in the last millennium. Every single one that achieved lasting success in space had thousands of years of technological development first. Humans are an anomaly, yes, but not an important one." Hyunwoo's face reddened, but he didn't back down. "But that's exactly why they're worth studying. How did they advance so quickly? What drove them to reach for the stars so fast?" "Luck," Taman said flatly. "Pure, simple luck. They found some advanced materials on their moon. They reverse-engineered technology they didn't really understand. Give it a few more centuries and they'll plateau like every other species." "You can't know that for certain?" Hyunwoo protested. Taman laughed. It wasn't a kind sound. "Dr. Zenth, I have been studying ancient civilizations since before you were born. I have seen this pattern dozens of times. A species gets lucky, advances rapidly for a short time, then settles into normal development patterns." He walked around the table, his hands clasped behind his back. Everyone's eyes followed him. "The humans have no ancient monuments, no lost cities, no mysterious artifacts from their past. Do you know what that tells us?" Hyunwoo shook his head. "It tells us they have no deep history worth studying. They are exactly what they appear to be, a young species that got lucky with some technology and made it to space faster than expected. Nothing more." Mion stood up to support her colleague. "Every great civilization leaves traces of its greatness scattered across time. The Valtharans built the crystal pyramids 8,000 years ago. The Korthans created the singing stones before they ever left their planet. The Zephyrians carved their entire moon into a work of art. She gestured toward the human files. What have humans left behind? Some metal structures that are falling apart. Primitive art that looks like children made it. Radio signals that barely travel beyond their own system. They're archaeologically irrelevant, Taman concluded. Spending resources to study them would be like studying insects. Interesting for a day or two, but ultimately pointless. Dr. Soman Park, a graduate student who rarely spoke in meetings, raised her hand hesitantly. What if we're wrong? The question hung in the air like a bad smell. Taman turned to look at her. Soman was one of Hyunwoo's students. Young, eager, and apparently foolish. Explain, Director Wolf said. Soman's voice was barely above a whisper. What if humans are more than they seem? What if we're missing something important? Taman walked over to her seat. He wasn't trying to intimidate her, but his reputation did that automatically. Miss Park, in 20 years of research I have developed a simple rule. When something looks simple, it usually is simple. Humans look like primitives because they are primitives. But what if? Soman started. There is no what if, Taman interrupted. There are facts. And the facts say that humans have been in space for 50 years. 50 years, Miss Park. The Veltheran Confederation has been exploring the galaxy for 12,000 years. Which civilization do you think has more to teach us? The room fell silent. Hyunwoo slumped in his chair. Soman looked down at her hands. Even the director seemed convinced. The matter is settled, Director Wolf announced. We will allocate minimal resources to human studies. Dr. Zenth, you may continue your work, but with a reduced budget. The Institute's focus will remain on established archaeological sites and civilizations with proven historical significance. As the meeting ended, people filed out of the chamber. Taman felt satisfied. He had protected the Institute from wasting time and money on a dead end. Hyunwoo walked past him, looking defeated. For a moment, Taman almost felt bad. The young man's heart was in the right place. But good intentions didn't change facts. Dr. Zenth, Taman called out. Hyunwoo stopped and turned around. Focus your research on real civilizations, Taman said, not unkindly. The galaxy is full of mysteries worth solving. Don't waste your career chasing shadows. Hyunwoo nodded and left the chamber. Taman gathered his files and headed back to his office. Tomorrow he would return to his real work. The excavation on Kepler 442b was yielding fascinating results. Ancient ruins that predated known galactic civilization by thousands of years. Now that was archaeology worth doing. He never imagined that in 6 months everything he thought he knew about the galaxy would be proven wrong, and it would all start with a simple discovery in his own backyard. 6 months had passed since the meeting that crushed Dr. Hyunwoo Zenth's hopes for studying humans. He had returned to his regular work with a heavy heart, but work was work. The bills didn't pay themselves, and the Institute still needed someone to dig through old ruins. Today, Hyunwoo stood at the edge of Site 47, a pre-spaceflight archaeological dig on the outskirts of New Velthar City. The site wasn't glamorous. No famous researchers worked here. No news crews filmed documentaries about amazing discoveries. It was just Hyunwoo, 3 graduate students, and a pile of ancient Veltheran pottery that looked exactly like every other pile of ancient Veltheran pottery he had ever seen. But it paid the bills. Professor, you need to see this, called Soman Park, one of his graduate students. She was the same young woman who had asked the uncomfortable question in the council meeting 6 months ago. Since then, she had thrown herself into her studies with impressive determination. Hyunwoo walked over to where Soman was kneeling beside a partially excavated wall. Her brush moved carefully across something embedded in the ancient stone. What did you find? He asked. I'm not sure, Soman replied. It looks like metal, but it doesn't match anything in our databases. Hyunwoo knelt beside her and examined the object. She was right. It looked like a piece of metal about the size of his palm, but the color was wrong. Veltheran metals had a specific blue-green tint that came from the minerals in their planet's crust. This metal was silver with gold streaks running through it. How deep was it buried? Hyunwoo asked. 3 meters down, embedded directly in the wall structure, Soman answered. It's not like someone dropped it here yesterday. It was built into the wall when the wall was made. Hyunwoo felt a familiar tingle in his chest. It was the feeling every archaeologist lived for. The moment when you found something that didn't fit, something that made you ask questions. Carefully extract it, he told Soman. Full documentation, photos from every angle. I want to know exactly how it was positioned. While Soman worked, Hyunwoo called Dr. Jiwon Marth, the Institute's materials analysis expert. If anyone could identify the strange metal, it would be Jiwon. 2 hours later, Jiwon arrived at the site in her mobile laboratory van. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who treated every sample like it might hold the secrets of the universe. In her experience, sometimes they did. "Show me what you've got," she said without any greeting. Soman handed her the extracted piece of metal. It was covered in markings that looked almost like writing, but not quite like any writing system they had ever seen. Jiwon examined it through her magnifying glass. "Interesting alloy. The base appears to be titanium, but there are elements I don't recognize immediately." She took the artifact to her van and began running tests. Hyunwoo and his students waited outside, trying not to look too eager. In archaeology, excitement usually led to disappointment. After an hour, Jiwon emerged with a confused look on her face. "Professor Zenth, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind where nothing makes sense." Jiwon held up a tablet showing her analysis results. "This alloy contains elements that don't exist naturally on Velthara Prime. The manufacturing technique is unlike anything our ancestors used, and according to my dating analysis, it's over 12,000 years old." Hyunwoo felt his heart skip.
12,000 years?
"Give or take a few centuries," Jiwon confirmed. "But here's the really weird part. The markings on the surface aren't Veltharan. They're not like any known language in the Confederation database." Someone leaned over Hyunwoo's shoulder to look at the tablet. Could it be from off-world traders? 12,000 years ago, we barely had agriculture," Hyunwoo said slowly. "We definitely didn't have contact with other worlds." The implications hung in the air like a heavy cloud. If the artifact was really 12,000 years old, and if it really came from off-world, then everything they knew about early Veltharan history was wrong. "There's more," Jiwon continued. "The markings appear to include mathematical symbols and what might be star charts. Primitive ones, but definitely astronomical in nature." Hyunwoo stared at the artifact in Jiwon's hands. His mind raced through possibilities. Ancient visitors? Lost technology, a hoax? "I need to report this to the Institute," he said finally. "Are you sure?" asked Minho, another graduate student. "Remember what happened last time you brought up something unusual?" Hyunwoo remembered. Dr. Taemin Korth had made him look like a fool in front of the entire council. But this was different. This was physical evidence, not theories about human potential. "I'm sure," he said. The next morning, Hyunwoo stood outside Taemin's office with the artifact carefully wrapped in protective cloth. His hands were sweating despite the cool air conditioning. He knocked on the door. "Come in," came Taemin's voice from inside. Hyunwoo entered the office. Taemin was reading something on his computer screen and didn't look up immediately. The office walls were covered with certificates, awards, and photos of Taemin at famous dig sites across the galaxy. "Dr. Zenth," Taemin said without looking away from his screen, "I hope you're not here to waste my time with more theories about primitive species." "I'm here about an artifact," Hyunwoo said. He placed the wrapped object on Taemin's desk. That got Taemin's attention. He looked up and frowned at the package. "What kind of artifact?" "Something we found at Site 47. Dr. Marth has analyzed it. The dating puts it at over 12,000 years old, but the materials and markings don't match any known Veltharan technology." Taemin's frown deepened. He unwrapped the artifact and examined it closely. Hyunwoo watched his expression change from bored annoyance to puzzled interest. "Where exactly did you find this?" "Embedded in a pre-spaceflight wall structure. Built into the original construction." Taemin turned the artifact over in his hands, studying the markings. "These symbols? They're not familiar. The mathematical notations are primitive but functional. And these star charts?" He trailed off, lost in thought. "Dr. Marth believes the materials come from off-world," Hyunwoo added carefully. "That's impossible," Taemin said automatically, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. "That's what I thought too. But the evidence..." Taemin stood up and walked to his window. Outside, the city of New Velthar stretched to the horizon. Somewhere out there, their ancestors had lived 12,000 years ago in simple stone buildings. Buildings that apparently contained artifacts from the stars. "Have you found anything else?" Taemin asked. "We've only been looking for 1 day since the discovery. But if there's one artifact, there might be more," Taemin finished. He turned back to face Hyunwoo. The young archaeologist could see the internal struggle on his mentor's face. Taman's entire career was built on understanding the past, but this artifact challenged everything he thought he knew. "I want to see the site," Taman said finally. "Of course. When would you like to visit?" "Now." An hour later, Taman stood in the excavation pit at Site 47, staring at the wall where Somin had found the artifact. His practiced eyes examined every stone, every layer of construction. "The wall is definitely authentic," he murmured. "Pre-spaceflight construction techniques. No signs of later modification or insertion." He looked at the hole where the artifact had been removed, and the positioning suggests it was placed there during original construction, not added later. Somin approached hesitantly. "Professor Korth, should we continue excavating? There might be more artifacts nearby." Taman was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he nodded. "Yes, expand the excavation carefully. Document everything. If there are more artifacts, I want to know about them immediately." As the students returned to work, Taman pulled Hyunwoo aside. "Dr. Zenth, I want you to understand something. If this artifact is what it appears to be, it could change our understanding of Valtharan history. That kind of discovery makes careers. It also destroys them if you're wrong." "I understand, Professor, do you? Because if we publish findings about mysterious off-world artifacts and then discover their modern forgeries or contamination, both our careers will be over." Hyunwoo met his gaze steadily. "I'm willing to take that risk if you are." Taman nodded slowly. "Then let's find out what our ancestors were hiding." As the sun set over Site 47, the excavation team worked by artificial lights. Already they had found 2 more metal fragments with similar markings. Each discovery raised more questions than it answered. 12,000 years ago, someone had visited Valthara Prime. Someone with technology and knowledge that shouldn't have existed. Someone who had left traces of their presence in the very foundations of Valtharan civilization. The question was, who? 3 weeks after the first discovery at Site 47, the Valtharan Institute was buzzing with activity. Word had spread quickly through the archaeological community that Hyunwoo's team had found something extraordinary. More sites across Valthara Prime were reporting similar artifacts. Dr. Taman Korth sat in his office, surrounded by photographs and analysis reports from 7 different dig sites. Each location had yielded metal artifacts with similar markings. Each artifact dated to roughly the same time period. 12,000 years ago, someone had been very busy on Valthara Prime. A knock on his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in." Dr. Minho Kex entered, carrying a thick folder under his arm. Minho was the Institute's top linguistics expert, a quiet man who spoke 12 languages fluently and could read ancient scripts that most people couldn't even pronounce. "Taman, I have the preliminary analysis of the artifact markings," Minho said. He sat down across from Taman's desk and opened his folder. "Tell me you've figured out what language this is," Taman said. Minho's expression was troubled. "That's the problem. It's not one language, it's several languages, and they're all connected in ways that don't make sense." He spread several photographs across the desk. Each showed different artifact markings blown up to show fine detail. "Look at this symbol." Minho pointed to a curved line with dots above it. "It appears on artifacts from 3 different sites, but it's used differently in each location." "Different how?" "In the Site 47 artifacts, it seems to represent a mathematical concept. In the Site 23 findings, it's part of what appears to be a star chart. In Site 31, it's used in what might be a navigation sequence." Taman leaned forward. "You're saying the same symbol has multiple meanings?" "I'm saying the same symbol system is being adapted for multiple purposes. That suggests either a very flexible language or," Minho trailed off. "Or what?" "Or multiple languages that share common roots. Languages that developed from the same source but evolved for different purposes." Taman felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of source?" Minho pulled out another photograph. This one showed a series of markings that looked almost like a primitive alphabet. "I ran these symbols through every database we have. Valtharan, Korthian, Zephyrian, even the ancient Maltaxi scripts. No matches. So it's a completely unknown language?" "That's what I thought initially. But then I ran a deeper analysis. I looked for structural similarities, mathematical patterns, anything that might give us a clue about the origin." Minho pulled out his tablet and showed Taemin a complex chart. The mathematical notations follow a base 10 system. Most galactic species use base 8 or base 12 systems because of their finger structure. Base 10 is relatively rare. Which species use base 10? Taemin asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. Only 3 known species in the Confederation database: the Altarians, who developed it independently about 4,000 years ago, the Centauri Federation, who adopted it from the Altarians, and... Minho paused, looking uncomfortable. And humans. Humans use a base 10 system. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Taemin stared at the tablet screen, his mind racing. It was impossible. Humans had only been in space for 50 years. These artifacts were 12,000 years old. It's a coincidence, Taemin said finally. Maybe, Minho agreed. But there's more. He pulled out another set of photographs. These markings appear to be star charts. Primitive ones, but functional. They show stellar positions and navigation routes. Routes to where? That's what's interesting. Dr. Una Bricks in stellar archaeology helped me analyze them. The charts show routes from this region of space toward the outer spiral arm. The outer spiral arm where humans come from. Specifically, toward a region that includes the Sol system. Taemin stood up and walked to his window. Outside, construction crews were working on a new wing of the Institute. Normal people doing normal work. Not dealing with impossible artifacts that challenged everything they thought they knew about history. There has to be another explanation, he said. I've been trying to find one for 3 weeks, Minho replied. The mathematical systems, the stellar navigation, the material composition, even the construction techniques. Everything points toward the same conclusion. Which is? These artifacts are human in origin. Before Taemin could respond, his door chimed again. Director Nari Wolth entered without waiting for permission. Her face was grim. We have a problem, she announced. Site 67 just made a major discovery. What kind of discovery? Taemin asked. The kind that's going to turn the archaeological world upside down. An hour later, Taemin, Minho, and Director Wolth stood in the Site 67 excavation tent. Dr. Hyunwoo Zenth was there, along with Dr. Jiwon Marth and several other researchers. All eyes were focused on a table in the center of the tent. On the table sat a device about the size of a small book. It was made of the same strange metal as the other artifacts, but this one was different. This one was complete. We found it in a sealed chamber, Hyunwoo explained. The chamber was deliberately hidden beneath what appears to be a ceremonial altar. What is it? Director Wolth asked. Dr. Jiwon stepped forward. Near as we can tell, it's some kind of data storage device. The metal casing protected the internal components from decay. There are crystalline structures inside that appear to be intact. You mean it might still contain information? That's what we're hoping to find out. Taemin approached the device carefully. It was covered in the same type of markings they had found on the other artifacts, but these markings were more elaborate, more intentional. Have you tried to activate it? He asked. We've been afraid to damage it, Hyunwoo replied. But Dr. Jiwon thinks she's figured out how it works. Jiwon moved to the device and pointed to a series of small indentations on its surface. These appear to be activation points. Based on the wear patterns, I believe you touch them in sequence. What sequence? The markings suggest a mathematical progression. If Dr. Kex is right about the base 10 system, then the sequence should be 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. She placed her fingers on the corresponding indentations and pressed gently. Nothing happened for a moment. Then slowly, the device began to emit a soft glow. The markings on its surface brightened, and a low humming sound filled the tent. It's working, Jiwon whispered. Suddenly, the air above the device shimmered. A 3-dimensional image appeared, flickering at first, then stabilizing. The image showed a star map, but not like any star map they had ever seen. This one was dynamic, showing stellar movements and navigation routes across vast distances. Incredible, Director Wolth breathed, but Taemin was focused on something else. In the corner of the holographic display, symbols appeared. Symbols that looked suspiciously like primitive writing. Minho, he said quietly. Look at those symbols. Minho stepped closer to the hologram. His face went pale. Those aren't Valtharan symbols. What are they? If I didn't know better, I'd say they were primitive versions of ancient Earth languages, Proto-Sanskrit, early Sumerian, possibly even pre-dynastic Egyptian. The tent went completely silent. Everyone stared at the hologram, then at Minho, then back at the hologram. That's impossible, Director Wolf said finally. So were the other artifacts, Hyunwoo pointed out. But here we are. Taemin felt his worldview cracking like old pottery. For 20 years he had built his reputation on understanding the past. He had dismissed humans as primitives with no significant history. He had been absolutely certain of his knowledge. He had been absolutely wrong. There's something else, Ji-won said quietly. She manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on one section of the star map. This navigation route, it originates from our solar system and leads directly toward the Sol system. The human system, Minho added unnecessarily. The display continued to cycle through different views, star charts, navigation data, what appeared to be technical specifications for some kind of spacecraft. And throughout it all, those strange symbols that looked increasingly like primitive human languages. Dr. Myeon-vel, who had been silent since arriving at the site, finally spoke. If these artifacts are really human in origin, and if they're really 12,000 years old, then everything we know about galactic history is wrong. Not everything, Taemin said slowly. Just everything about humans. He looked around the tent at the faces of his colleagues. Scientists who had devoted their lives to understanding the past. People who prided themselves on following evidence wherever it led. The evidence was leading them toward an impossible conclusion. 12,000 years ago, when Valtharan civilization was still learning to farm, humans had been traveling between the stars. Not the modern humans who had recently contacted the Confederation, but their ancestors. An ancient human civilization that had somehow achieved interstellar travel millennia before any other known species. What do we do now? Hyunwoo asked. Taemin looked at the holographic display still floating above the ancient device. The star map showed routes between dozens of systems. The navigation data suggested a civilization that had explored vast regions of space. Now, he said, we admit that we were wrong about humans. Very, very wrong. The implications were staggering. If humans had been traveling between stars 12,000 years ago, what had happened to that ancient civilization? How had they fallen back to a single planet? 2 months after the discovery of the data storage device, the Valtharan Confederation launched its most ambitious archaeological expedition in centuries. The research ship Deep Memory carried a team of 30 specialists toward 3 star systems identified in the ancient human navigation charts. Dr. Taemin Korth stood on the ship's observation deck, watching stars stream past as they traveled faster than light toward their first destination. He had volunteered to lead the expedition personally, something he hadn't done in 5 years. This discovery was too important to trust to others. Beside him, Dr. Hyunwoo Zenth reviewed data on his tablet. The young archaeologist had become the expedition's expert on ancient human artifacts. His earlier humiliation at the institute had been forgotten, replaced by respect and academic fame. The first system should have at least 3 potentially habitable worlds, Hyunwoo reported. If the ancient humans were really traveling these routes, they might have established way stations or settlements. Any signs of current activity? Taemin asked. The system is listed as uninhabited in Confederation records. No known intelligent species, but our records only go back 8,000 years. Dr. Una Brix, the expedition's stellar archaeologist, joined them at the observation window. We'll reach the system in 6 hours. I've been analyzing the star positions from the ancient charts. The navigation data is incredibly precise for its age. Precise enough to indicate professional space travelers, Taemin agreed. The first system, designated as Target Alpha, contained 4 planets orbiting a sun very similar to Valthera Prime's star. According to the ancient charts, the 3rd planet had been of particular interest to the ancient humans. When they arrived, initial scans of the planet showed no signs of current civilization. But there were structures on the surface. Old structures. We're reading artificial formations in the northern hemisphere, reported the ship's sensor officer. Geometric patterns too regular to be natural. Take us down, Taman ordered. The expedition's shuttle landed near what appeared to be the remains of a small settlement. From the air, they had seen building foundations arranged in a precise grid pattern. On the ground, the ruins were clearly artificial but very old. Dr. Jiwan Marth knelt beside one of the foundation stones and ran her portable analyzer over it. The construction technique is similar to what we found in the Veltharan artifacts, but the materials are different. Locally sourced but processed using advanced techniques. Yunwu was examining what appeared to be the remains of a central building. This looks like it might have been some kind of control center or communication hub. Any artifacts? Taman asked. Several metal fragments with familiar markings, Yunwu replied. And something else. He led Taman to a partially buried structure that looked different from the others. This one was made of a material that had weathered better than the surrounding stone. It's some kind of vault or storage facility, Yunwu explained. The entrance is sealed, but the seal uses the same symbol system we found on Velthara Prime. Working together, the team managed to open the ancient vault. Inside, they found dozens of data storage devices similar to the one discovered on Velthara Prime. But these were larger, more sophisticated. It's like a library, Dr. Yuna whispered as she examined the devices. A repository of information. They activated one of the devices using the same sequence that had worked on the previous discovery. The holographic display that appeared showed detailed star charts covering hundreds of systems, navigation routes, planetary surveys, resource assessments, but most importantly, it showed text in the ancient human languages that Dr. Minho had identified. We need to contact the Institute immediately, Taman said. This is beyond anything we expected to find. Back on Velthara Prime, Director Nari Wolth received the expedition's report with a mixture of excitement and concern. The implications were staggering. If the ancient humans had established way stations across multiple star systems, they had created the first known interstellar civilization in galactic history. We need to contact Earth, she told her staff during an emergency meeting. The modern humans need to know what we've discovered. The first contact with Earth's archaeological community came 3 days later. Dr. Sung-Hoon Tara, one of Earth's leading ancient history specialists, appeared on the Institute's main communication screen looking confused and excited. You're telling us that you found human artifacts on alien worlds? He asked. Artifacts that are 12,000 years old? That's correct, Director Wolth replied. We believe your ancestors had developed interstellar travel millennia before any other known species. Dr. Sung-Hoon was quiet for a long moment. That would explain some things we've found on Earth, he said finally. What kind of things? Gaps in our archaeological record. Periods where advanced civilizations seem to have simply vanished. We always assumed it was due to natural disasters or social collapse. Another human archaeologist joined the conversation. Dr. Jamin Oren specialized in prehistoric human migrations. There are legends in many Earth cultures about the long journey and distant shores among stars. We always thought they were metaphorical. They might have been literal, Director Wolth suggested. Dr. Sung-Hoon nodded thoughtfully. If a significant portion of our ancient population left Earth to explore space, that would explain why our technological development seemed to restart several times. We weren't just rebuilding after disasters. We were rebuilding after our most advanced people left the planet. The conversation continued for several hours. The human archaeologists shared their data about mysterious gaps in Earth's ancient history. The Veltharans shared their discoveries of human artifacts. Across multiple worlds, a picture began to emerge of an ancient human civilization that had achieved interstellar travel approximately 12,000 years ago. This civilization had established way stations and settlements across vast regions of space, creating the first galactic network of exploration and trade. But something had happened to them. The ancient settlements had been abandoned. The interstellar civilization had collapsed. Most of the ancient humans had either died out or returned to Earth, where they blended back into the remaining population. The question is, what happened to them? Dr. Jamin asked during one of their conversations. Maybe they overextended themselves, Yunwu suggested, spread too thin across too many worlds. Or maybe they encountered something dangerous, Yuna added ominously. Meanwhile, the expedition continued their survey of the ancient human sites. At their second target system, they found the remains of what appeared to be a major hub facility. This wasn't just a way station. It was a full settlement that had housed thousands of people. The ruins were more extensive and better preserved than the first site. They found workshops, living quarters, and what appeared to be a spaceport capable of handling large vessels. But they also found something disturbing. Many of the buildings showed signs of hasty abandonment, personal belongings left behind, tools dropped in the middle of work, food preparation areas with meals half finished. Something made them leave quickly, Taman observed as he examined one of the abandoned workshops. All of them at once, Jiwan added. This wasn't a gradual decline, it was a sudden evacuation. At the third target system, they found similar evidence, another abandoned human settlement, this one showing signs of even more rapid departure. Some buildings had been deliberately destroyed, as if the inhabitants were trying to prevent something from following them. They were running from something, Hyunwoo said as they examined the ruins. But what? The answer came when they discovered the final data repository at the third site. The information stored in these devices was different from the others. Instead of navigation charts and resource surveys, these contained what appeared to be warning messages. Dr. Minho, who had joined the expedition for the final phase, worked for days to translate the ancient text. When he finished, his face was pale. What does it say? Taman asked. It's a warning about something they call the darkness between stars. Something that hunted their ships and consumed their settlements. A hostile alien species? That's what I thought initially. But the more I read, the more it sounds like they're describing something else, something that wasn't alive in any way we would understand. The warning messages painted a picture of an ancient human civilization that had expanded too far, too fast. They had encountered something in deep space that they couldn't fight or understand, something that had systematically destroyed their outposts and forced them to abandon their interstellar empire. The survivors had fled back to Earth and hidden among the remaining population. They had deliberately destroyed most records of their advanced civilization to prevent the darkness from tracking them home. That's why modern humans seem to develop so slowly, Taman realized. They weren't primitives. They were hiding. And now they're coming back into space, Hyunwoo added. After 12,000 years of hiding, they're ready to try again. The expedition returned to Velthura Prime with enough evidence to rewrite galactic history. The ancient humans hadn't just been spacefaring. They had been the first great galactic civilization. Their network of settlements and trade routes had laid the foundation for everything that came after. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Valthuran Confederation had never been so full. Representatives from over 200 member species filled every seat. News crews from across the galaxy pointed their cameras toward the central podium, where Dr. Taman Korth stood, with a presentation remote in his hand. Director Nari Walth sat in the front row, along with Dr. Hyunwoo Zenth, Dr. Minho Kex, and the other members of the expedition team. In the Special Observer section, human representatives Dr. Seung-hoon Tara and Dr. Jaemin Oren waited nervously. Above the podium, a massive holographic display showed the seal of the Valtharan Institute. In a few moments, everything the galaxy thought it knew about human civilization would change forever. Council Speaker Kyung-soo Helm, the Confederation's chief historical advisor, called for silence. The Assembly recognizes Dr. Taman Korth of the Valtharan Institute, presenting findings that the Council has designated as potentially galaxy-changing in scope. Taman looked out over the assembled delegates. 6 months ago, he had stood in a much smaller room and dismissed humanity as archaeologically irrelevant. Today he was about to prove that humans were the most archaeologically significant species in galactic history. Honored delegates, he began. 8 months ago, this assembly classified humanity as a Category C civilization. Recently spacefaring, limited historical significance, not worthy of extensive study or resources. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Everyone knew where this was going. I was one of the strongest supporters of that classification, Taman continued. I believed that humans were primitives who had gotten lucky with some advanced technology. I was wrong. We were all wrong. Catastrophically wrong. The holographic display changed to show an image of the first artifact found at Site 47. This artifact was discovered embedded in a 12,000-year-old wall on Valthera Prime. Initial analysis suggested it was of unknown origin. Further investigation revealed something impossible. It was human. The hall erupted in surprised voices. Speaker Helm called for order. Not modern human, Taman clarified as the noise died down. Ancient human. From a civilization that achieved interstellar travel over 12 millennia ago. The display changed to show the star maps from the ancient data storage devices. These navigation charts, found in sealed repositories on Velthara Prime, show detailed routes between hundreds of star systems. They are written in primitive human languages and contain mathematical notations using the base 10 system characteristic of human mathematics. A delegate from the Korthian hegemony stood up. Are you suggesting that humans were traveling between stars before any other known species? I'm not suggesting it, Taman replied. I'm proving it. The next series of images showed the ruins discovered during the expedition. Settlement foundations, technological artifacts, and the sophisticated data storage facilities found on 3 different worlds. We have now confirmed the existence of ancient human settlements on 11 different worlds across 4 star systems. These settlements show clear evidence of advanced technology, organized society, and extensive trade networks. Dr. Mionvel, who was attending as a special advisor to the assembly, asked the question everyone was thinking. If humans had such advanced civilization 12,000 years ago, what happened to it? Why did modern humans seem so primitive when we first encountered them? Taman paused dramatically before answering. Because they were hiding. The display changed to show translated text from the warning messages found at the 3rd site. The ancient humans encountered something in deep space that they couldn't fight or understand. Something that systematically destroyed their outposts and forced them to abandon their interstellar empire. The survivors fled back to Earth and deliberately hid their advanced technology to avoid being tracked. What did they encounter? Asked a delegate from the Zephyrian Alliance. We don't know, Taman admitted. The ancient records refer to it as the darkness between stars, but provide no clear description. What we do know is that it was powerful enough to force the galaxy's first interstellar civilization to abandon space travel entirely. Speaker Helm leaned forward in his chair. Dr. Korth, what are the implications of these discoveries for our understanding of galactic history? Taman had prepared for this question. It was the most important part of his presentation. The implications are profound, he said. When we trace the development of galactic civilization, we find that every major trade route, every significant exploration pattern, every choice of which systems to settle first, all of it, follows paths that were originally blazed by ancient humans. The display showed a complex 3-dimensional map of galactic trade routes and human exploration patterns. The correlation was undeniable. The ancient humans didn't just have the first interstellar civilization. They created the template that every other species has followed. We are all building on foundations that humans laid 12,000 years ago. The hall was completely silent now. Delegates stared at the display, trying to process the implications. Furthermore, Taman continued, genetic analysis of various species shows trace elements that can only be explained by ancient contact with human DNA. The ancient humans didn't just explore space. They formed peaceful relationships with the species they encountered. A delegate from the Altarian Republic stood up. Are you saying that humans influenced the development of other species? I'm saying that humans helped other species develop. They shared technology, established trade networks, and created the conditions that allowed galactic civilization to flourish after they were gone. Dr. Hyunwoo Zenth stood up in the front row. Speaker Helm recognized him. If I may add, Hyunwoo said, our analysis suggests that several key technological developments attributed to other species actually originated from ancient human innovations. The quantum communication systems used throughout the Confederation, for example, show design principles that match ancient human engineering. The human representative, Dr. Seung-hoon Tara, was recognized by the speaker. From the human perspective, Dr. Seung-hoon said, these discoveries explain many mysteries in our own archaeological record. We always wondered why our development seemed to restart multiple times throughout history. Now we understand that our most advanced populations were leaving Earth to explore space. What about modern humans? Asked the Korthian delegate. If their ancestors were so advanced, why did they seem primitive when we first contacted them? Dr. Jamin Oren answered this question. Because they were rebuilding from scratch every few thousand years. Each time Earth developed space-capable technology, the most adventurous humans left to explore the galaxy. The remaining population had to rebuild without their most advanced scientists and engineers. But now they're back, Taman said, resuming control of the presentation. After 12,000 years of hiding, humans are returning to space, and they're developing faster than any species in recorded history, because they're not learning something new. They're remembering something old. The final display showed current human space development, compared to other species' historical patterns. Humans achieved interstellar travel 50 years after their first space flight. The next fastest species took 800 years. Humans aren't lucky primitives who found advanced technology. They're the heirs to the galaxy's greatest civilization finally coming home. Speaker Helm stood up. Dr. Korth, what is your recommendation to this assembly? I recommend that we immediately reclassify humanity from Category C to Category A status. Primary archaeological significance, full resource allocation for joint Human Confederation research projects, and most importantly, formal recognition that human civilization is not a newcomer to galactic society. It's the foundation upon which all galactic society is built. The speaker called for a vote. The result was overwhelming. 437 votes in favor, 12 abstentions, and not a single vote against. As the delegates filed out of the hall, chattering excitedly about the revelations, Taman found himself approached by Dr. Seung-Hoon Tara. Dr. Korth, the human archaeologist, said, I want to thank you for having the courage to admit you were wrong about my species. Taman shook his hand. I want to thank you for being gracious about it. I said some very dismissive things about humans 6 months ago. You said what the evidence suggested at the time, Dr. Seung-Hoon replied. That's what good scientists do. They follow the evidence wherever it leads, even when it proves them wrong. What will you do now? Taman asked. We're going to search for more ancient human sites. Your discoveries suggest there might be hundreds of settlements scattered across the galaxy. Each one could contain technology and knowledge that was lost when our ancestors fled back to Earth. And the darkness between stars that drove them away? Dr. Seung-Hoon's expression became serious. We don't know if it's still out there, but if it is, we'll face it better together than our ancestors did alone. As Taman walked back to his office that evening, he reflected on how much his life had changed in 8 months. He had started as an arrogant academic who thought he knew everything about the past. He was ending as a humbler scientist who understood how much he still had to learn. The humans had taught him that lesson. Not through argument or debate, but through the quiet persistence of evidence.